evening, Las Cruces. You're watching What's Next, and I'm your host, Cassandra Galban, and we're sitting down again with Gregory Z Smith, your 2019 candidate for Mayor of Las Cruces. How are you doing, Greg?
All right, good to see you, Cassandra.
Good. So I understand you've been out on the campaign trail, speaking with constituents.
Yes, ma'am.
Having face-to-face conversations with everyone. So we went ahead and we took the opportunity to take down some questions from the voters, and we're just going to throw those at you, okay?
Okay.
All right. So the first one that we got a lot was, you keep saying that you want to be the full-time mayor. So why do we need a full-time mayor?
Well, we're at a point in Las Cruces where we have a lot of things coming together. We have unique opportunities. We also have unique challenges. And we need a mayor, even though the city council and the mayor are part of a policy-making body, we need to be paying attention. We need to be listening. We need to be aware of what's going on and what those opportunities and challenges are. That really requires full-time attention. So I've treated my job as a city councilor as a full-time job. I'm not trying to do something else at the same time. I'm focused on the issues in District 2 and in Las Cruces and in our part of the world. And I think we need that same kind of focus at the mayoral level at this point. So that's why I use the term full-time mayor. Now, some people ask the question, does that mean that you want the mayor to be paid more? Mm-hmm. Currently, the mayor is paid 2.5 times what the rest of the councilors are paid. And that is because the expectation is that the mayor will be a full-time job. And so I'm not looking at trying to give the mayor more money. I'm looking at simply having a person in that position earning that salary.
Okay, and so speaking of, city council positions and other positions within the city, a lot of people, they want to know what happened with the city manager resigning and where do we go moving forward?
Well, and that's a difficult question because we do get a lot of questions along those lines, and a lot of people want to know, feel that it is their right to know. And the reality is that there are three circumstances in which we can go into closed meetings as a city council. We can go into a closed meeting on a personnel issue, and basically the only personnel issue that we really have is our one person who we employ, and that's the city manager. Everybody else is under the city manager. But the other two issues that we can go into closed meetings about are real estate. In other words, if we're showing our hand in trying to make a deal for a piece of real estate, that sometimes can put us at a disadvantage. And the other is litigation, lawsuits, things like that. And similarly, if you're showing your hand, if you're talking about your position or what you're willing to do, those kinds of things, then people on the other side of that kind of issue can then take advantage of that. So those are the three circumstances in which we can go into closed meetings. The expectation is that we will come out of those meetings and either vote on a particular issue and take in an open meeting a vote, or at the very least, of course, keep our mouths closed about what happened or what was said in those closed meetings. That's the obligation, that's the expectation that we have from those closed meetings. So what happened with our last city manager was something that we had those discussions at closed meetings. And so I'm not at liberty to talk about what exactly happened. What I will say is that that happened in April. And we're looking at a situation now where it could easily be next April before we hire a new city manager. We've had an interim city manager. He's been doing a fantastic job, but his understanding, our understanding, the staff's understanding is he's interim. He's basically there for a certain period of time. We might decide to hire him at some later point, but he's not really in that full opportunity to take advantage or to be fully in charge of the city as an interim city manager. I feel very strongly we should have done more to get a new city manager in place. Could have been this same person, but somebody in place with that full authority to be the city manager while we're going through the election and while the new councilors, there could be 2 new councilors, there could be 3, there could be 4 people on the council who are new this coming year. Get those people up to speed as far as what's expected of a city manager and what we need to do. And so all of that's going to take some time. And frankly, it might even take longer than April to get somebody new in that position. So I felt very strongly that we should put somebody in place, probably the current interim city manager, but put somebody in place for a 1-year trial basis, have that person in place with the full authority to be the city manager and get those things going forward. Because right now there's just a lot of things that, as good a job as our current interim city manager is doing, there are a lot of things that are just sort of hanging there waiting for somebody to have that position to take charge. Yeah. And so that's a real difference, I think, between our current mayor and what I would have done under those circumstances.
Okay, so you mean creating the position where someone can, build the relationships with the council and, create that bridge so that the city can function?
Yes, it's an extremely important position. Basically, I've mentioned this before, but we have a council city manager form of government. And in essence, we are two of the three branches of government. The judicial branch operates separately from us, but it is part of our municipal government. And then the city council is the policy-making body and that arm of the government. And then the city manager, who the city council does hire, is in charge of the executive branch, making sure things happen, making sure our policies are enforced, those kinds of things. So in hiring a city manager, we have probably one of the most important things that we can do. That person needs to have both the vision, but also the understanding of what we want to see happening, because we're the ones charged with making those decisions. And so he or she, someday we'll have a female city manager, he or she needs to make sure that they understand what the council is seeing as necessary and how to execute that, how to make it happen, and to do that in a way that works for Las Cruces and works for the city council.
Okay, so speaking of what works for Las Cruces and how City Council is trying to take the best of that and move forward, relationships are really important. You've said not only within the city and within council, but between people and employees, but with White Sands, El Paso, Juarez, and the surrounding areas. Those relationships are important, and so. Why do you see that they're important, and what role would you play in building and maintaining those relationships?
That's an excellent question. And I'll tell you, Friday morning I went out to White Sands with Ashley Curry, and we walked with school children over to the elementary and middle school there at White Sands Missile Range. That is part of my ongoing relationship there. I'm often there for the change of command. I'm there for some of the luncheons and other events that they have. That is one of the areas where a huge part of our economy comes from people being at White Sands, using our contractors, hiring people locally. And that's a relationship that's very important to us. It's very important to them. Similarly, we have relationships like that with other cities in New Mexico that are nearby, but also with El Paso and with Juarez. We have economic, cultural, familial types of relationships with those places, and so it is really important that our mayor, especially I believe if I'm the next mayor, that we continue to have those increased relationships, going to those places, inviting them here, having that connection so that we can work together for the best things in our region and in our community. And that's one of those things where when nobody else on the council is doing something like that, I often wait, I go, is somebody else going to pick this up and do this? Go to El Paso or go to Alamogordo or go to Deming or Hatch. And if nobody else does it, then I go, well, we've got to have representation there. We've got to have somebody going. I will go again. I've done that on a regular basis for the New Mexico Municipal League, for our councils of government, both the Rio Grande Council of Government in El Paso and the South Central Council of Government in New Mexico. I've done that because I think it's really important for us to be a partner and present and listening and connecting and getting the advantages that come from those relationships. And so that's something that you will see me continue to do if I'm elected mayor and expand upon, because I think it's also incumbent on the mayor to ask other members of the council, can you go? Can you be part of this? That's part of like succession planning, but also part of sharing that relationship so that other members of the council are doing those things. We don't typically get asked at this point to step up, and sometimes when everybody is otherwise busy or somebody just doesn't feel like they need to go, sometimes those opportunities to connect with our neighbors don't happen. Same kinds of things in our community. going to the various meetings of the different organizations that we have, going to ribbon cuttings, going to celebratory events or honoring events. It's important for the people in our community to see that their mayor and their council members care and are part of what's going on.
Well, yeah, speaking so people in the community seeing, that you care about them as people, interacting with them. One of the questions that we saw a lot was, do you think that the city should be more business friendly or more customer friendly?
Well, and that's oftentimes people want to simplify that down to, okay, how can we say something that's just very simple and everybody understands? Well, not everybody understands exactly what either of those things mean. Yeah. But I think that probably in general what we could say is that of the two, more customer friendly from the standpoint of when our businesses come to City Hall and they want to get a permit or they need to get an inspector, they are basically our customers at the city. We need to make sure that we're treating them with all the respect and with all the expediency that we can. And I do hear horror stories sometimes about people coming in and it taking months, even more than a year, to get their permitting process taken care of. Now, sometimes that's really part of the process. We want to make sure the buildings are safe. We want to make sure that they fit in our community appropriately. And sometimes people come in with plans that are substandard or need adjustment. That will happen. But the number of times that we hear that people have had bad experiences, that goes back to how important it is for us to make sure that all of our staff understand this and that we're funding and staffing and resourcing all of those things in a way that makes us customer friendly as a city government and makes our city then customer friendly as far as people coming to Las Cruces or living in Las Cruces for the services that they get and the products they get here.
Yeah. So what are some of those ideas that you have to bring those two together?
Well, one of the things that we hear regularly is that we don't have enough electrical inspectors. We're currently with 2 electrical inspectors, and that slows things down, and we need 3, and we're talking about actually needing 4, and yet to have somebody with the appropriate certification, with the interest in living in Las Cruces, who we can afford to pay to be here. All of those things are things that we need to put in place. So if we take the example of the electrical inspectors and we expand that out to police officers, firefighters, all the different people we have at the city who we need to fill out those ranks and make sure that we have enough people in position. Because part of the problem is oftentimes we're simply not able to find people in Las Cruces whom we can hire, excuse me, I don't want to say fire, but hire for those positions, and how do we get them in place? So working on, okay, so what are people looking for? That oftentimes comes back to what are the amenities in our community? What are the things that people want to be sure their children can have? What are the things that they want to be sure that they can do in their off time? What are the things that they are looking at and saying, this makes this a community where I want to be? So those are things that go beyond what we can actually pay people and go to what is this community able to show the rest of the world, or at least the people we're hoping will come here. What are we able to show them as far as what we've got going on here? But additionally, I think we need to probably do in our Human Resources office, and we just had a new person take on the directorship of that department, but in that office, we need to be looking more in a more holistic way, in a broader based way, and a more flexible way at how we get the people in position we need in those positions. And that just needs to be something we really focus on in a more thorough way.
Right, thank you for that. So like this focus on, finding more people, how do people in the community who want to help then? You have just a few seconds left to try and let people know how, if they're interested in these management positions, how do they help?
We have a website. The city website actually has an employment place on the menu where you can check out the jobs that are available. And every time that a job says something's preferred or something's required, if you've got close to that, it's still worth it to check it out. Check it out and talk to the people, because sometimes even though you don't have exactly everything that we're looking for, if you're coming close enough and you present yourself well enough, you can sometimes actually of course, it's our Human Resources Office, not the City Council, but you can often get a position at the city or someplace else, even though you don't have exactly what they're looking for. Sometimes the position is so strictly requiring certain qualifications, you've got to have those. But other times you can check and say, okay, I don't have all of these 5 qualifications, but I've got 4 of them. Could you still interview me for this particular job?
Mm-hmm. All right, so it's just about taking an opportunity in a city where you want to create those opportunities and taking advantage of them.
Yes, and we have internships. We have other opportunities for young people and people interested to sort of phase into their opportunities. But I would absolutely check out the city's website and go look at the employment opportunities.
All right. Well, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more on What's Next with Gregory Z Smith.
So great, you can do all these different gears, like land.
Okay.
Nice.
Other guys, not all.
Horizon Granite is here. We'll come to you to customize your kitchen and bathroom with beautiful countertops and cabinets. Find out more at horizongranite.com. Call us at 575-650-3180.
Horizon Granite is here.
It's here.
Make yourself a beautiful home.
Hi, I'm Ray Bamberg with Here on Earth. I would like to invite you for a free hearing evaluation to our office. We've been here in southern New Mexico for 34 years helping people hear better.
Welcome back, Las Cruces. You're watching What's Next with Gregory Z Smith. And we're sitting down and we're asking the questions that you sent us in. So, we've spoken a lot about growth in the community and expanding. Some of the concerns that have come up with constituents are the environmental concerns. One of the questions that we saw a lot being, how can the city grow without water? We're in like really drought heavy area. It does seem like a big issue, and water has driven civilization for centuries.
Millennia.
So how do you see that going?
Well, first of all, we're very fortunate in Las Cruces as far as the water question. A lot of people see the river dry a good part of the year, and of course our river is for agricultural use. The water that comes down the river, the Rio Grande, is used for agriculture. We're dependent on groundwater wells. Mm-hmm. And so we have rights in 2 different bolsons, or 2 different aquifers. The Mesilla bolson, which we share with Mexico and Texas, and the Jornada bolson, or aquifer, which is north of here. And in those 2 instances, we're actually in pretty good shape. I would never encourage anyone to waste our water, but we're actually in pretty good shape. We of course have some Supreme Court cases and things that need to be settled, but we seem to be in a pretty good position as far as reasonable growth in the not too distant future. So that's an area where a lot of people have concern, but I think in the reality we're basically pretty secure going into the next 50 years as far as water. Now, as far as the other things that we want to see happening, growth in Las Cruces, there's a wide range of views about growth. There are people who don't want to see us growing at all, and that's basically impossible. And there are people who don't care how much we grow, they want to see us growing very quickly and widely. And that's probably not as much what we want to see as what I've been looking at how do we then make sure that we're planning for appropriate growth? We're planning for growth, we're planning for Las Cruces being larger than it is, but not growing to the size of Tucson or the size even of, Tucson, I was going to say Phoenix or El Paso, or Albuquerque even, but more along the lines of, okay, how do we measure going forward? How do we make sure that we're ready for it, both with water and infrastructure and the other things that we have going on, and the services that the city needs to provide? So I look at all of that as part of what we do, being visionary about our future, looking at what we have needed in the past, what we continue to need, and what we'll likely need in the future. And how do we put those things in place, or how do we plan for them as we're going along? And certainly a big part of that is our young people. How are we making sure that our young people have careers here, have opportunities for recreation and entertainment, those kinds of things, to make sure that Las Cruces is where they want to be and where they want to raise their families?
Yeah, we've spoken about, making Las Cruces, a desirable place to be. We've also spoken about the creative economy, but you just mentioned agriculture. What role does, the city play in agriculture, and where do you see that going and helping with that economic growth?
Well, I think agriculture is basically the basis for where Las Cruces is. Yeah. We're in a fertile valley where water has been available, and so that's really at the heart of Las Cruces. And we still have agriculture here. However, it's less and less a part of our economy. It's going to continue to, I think, be a strong part of our economy, but there are other things developing along the way. But the other part of that is that as we look at what's happening with the immigration policies, as we look at what's happening with mechanization, things that are happening that are reducing the number of people needed to actually do a lot of those jobs, we need to be looking at, okay, yes, how do we include agriculture as we go forward, but also how do we plan for that point when agriculture is no longer a steady or a regularly expected job for people? Because that, I think we're getting to that point where a lot of things are going to be done by machine, a lot of things are going to be done agriculturally in ways that don't require a lot of people. Those are things we have to plan for and be ready for.
Okay, yeah, so speaking of planning and being ready, and taking all of that into consideration, what's next? Gregory Z. Smith, so what does the future look like?
Future in Las Cruces, I think, is actually something very exciting. We really are at a place where, with what's happening at Spaceport America, what's happening at Santa Teresa, what's happening in our own community right here, there are a lot of pieces coming together, and that's why we really need to be looking more opportunistically, if you will, or optimistically towards what's available to us and what can be happening here. We often have, unfortunately, I think, a tendency to sort of go, okay, well, it looks like that's going to happen. Let's just sit back and wait for it to happen. And sometimes those things simply do not happen because we've been waiting for them to happen, but we haven't actively participated in making them happen. So I think the city, a number of things that I've mentioned before, but the city doing things to make sure that we have the assets in place, that we have the welcoming attitude to businesses and to people that helps them feel comfortable being here and helps them feel like they're going to have the personnel, they're going to have the services, they're going to have the things that they need to be successful in Las Cruces. And that's huge.
All right. Well, so that all sounds like you have a lot of hopes for the future, and that Las Cruces is going to stay and continue to be a growing and really successful city within itself. Speaking back to the campaign, it's been really busy for you, right? And early voting starts tomorrow.
That's amazing. Yeah, it really is. Well, I'll tell you, we've been knocking on doors, we've been going to forums, we've been going to events, and all of that is definitely time-consuming, but it's also very inspiring, frankly. I hear all kinds of things from people, encouraging. They've been watching the city council meetings. They've been, reading the newsletters that I send out. They've been paying attention to what's happening on the campaign trail. And so I'm very, very inspired by the number of people I speak with who are paying attention, who are encouraging, and who are saying that, they care about Las Cruces. They want to see good things happening in the future.
Oh, so people who care about Las Cruces, what are ways that they can still get involved? Is there still time for them to get involved? What are things that they can do?
Well, they definitely can get involved, both by coming to the city council meetings, talking to us at the city council, talking to their council members on the city standpoint, but also from the campaign standpoint. Yes, with early voting starting at the county building tomorrow, and then early voting starting a little more than a week later, I think, at some other locations. And then, of course, November 5th with convenience centers all over the county. It's coming up on us very, very quickly. And we have less than a month to see this whole thing settled. And what I would like to see is many thanks to all of the people who have been helping out with the walking. Many thanks to the people who have been talking to their friends, sending postcards, making campaign contributions. We haven't seen them yet in the newspapers, but I've been told by a couple of people they're actually going to be writing some letters to the editor, so I'm looking forward to seeing those. But I think in many ways what has been so gratifying is just the level of support, the encouragement, as I said before, but the number of people basically offering up their time and their resources to help us out. We still could use more. Each time that we go for a walk, it's a guess. Are we going to have 10 people walking or just a couple? It's always great because meeting people at the doors is usually a very fun and friendly experience. But in addition to that, we can cover more doors. We can cover talking to more people. If more people walk with us on Saturday mornings, we can certainly, I hear from people who have heard from their friends, oh yeah, so-and-so was telling me about your campaign. I'm really interested in what you're doing in this particular area. Or again, like I said before, people have been watching. I always think, really, you're watching our city council meetings? But there are a number of people who do. They watch those meetings, they see what we have to say, and I've been hearing from people saying, I appreciate how you approach that. I enjoy your explanation of why you're voting the way you're voting or why you're asking for certain things.
All right. Well, thank you. So with a little bit of time that we have left, is there anything that you would like to say to our viewers, the voters, with early voting starting tomorrow? Is there anything that you would just like to get out there right now?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I am a traditionalist. I like to vote on election day. I've done that all my life. I think I maybe have voted absentee once and early once. But I know that other people like to make sure they know how they're going to vote and they're going to get it taken care of and out of the way. Early voting this year might be a little different simply because of the ranked choice voting, and there are 10 candidates for mayor. So it's hard to know exactly, or a lot of people say they don't know all of the candidates and they maybe want to take a little time to know them better. So I would say that that's probably an area where we're going to see maybe a little more of a delay on the early voting. But it does start tomorrow at the county building. And if people already know how they're going to vote, then please, by all means, make sure you get your vote taken care of. Additionally, just caring about Las Cruces, making sure that we have the leadership both in the mayor's office and in the 2 city council positions that are open. That's extremely important. Even though it's simply a policy setting role, we also do a lot of advocacy for our community, for our districts, and for each other even sometimes. That's a role that I took on when I was mayor pro tem. I would advocate with the mayor for some of the other councilors. So that advocacy, that engagement, all of that's important, not just from the candidates, but from the people in this community. We are in a fantastic place. Let's work on getting it better. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Las Cruces. You were watching What's Next with Gregory Z Smith. Have a good night.
I'm Gregory Z Smith, candidate for mayor of Las Cruces, and I approve this message. Sylvia Comunez, Treasurer.